some visuals. Okay, so read with me at Codes of Harmony. This is the book that we're going to be reading from, Psychic Powers from Mysteries of the Unknown. And this is from Lifetime Books. And it just says edited by the editors of Lifetime Books. Maybe. Yeah. So this is the chapter I'm going to start with. Before I begin, I'll just say that the music that you can hear in the background is copyright-free music. And this particular thing is called Inspiring Meditation by Saavane, I believe, which is Saavane. And you can find this copyright-free music, including meditations, at Pixabay. Pixabay. So, let me say that please excuse me not putting many tarot readings or channeled messages up recently. And I didn't think I was going to do any videos tonight. And then I just had this intuition that maybe some people are missing me here in this space. So I thought, if there are people missing me, missing my magic, maybe even just the calming, comforting sound of my voice, then maybe we should just read together tonight. How about that? So again, for those who are just joining us, journeying with us, this is from Psychic Powers, Mysteries of the Unknown, is the series of books. And the chapter we're going to start with is Mystic Powers of the Shamans. Making it very clear, these are not my own words. These are not my own opinions. These are words in a book on page 75 of the book I just mentioned. Mystic Powers of the Shamans. While claims of psychic powers are viewed by many today with a healthy dose of skepticism, some cultures accept contact with supernatural forces without question. Since earliest times, tribal societies have honored individuals believed to possess the ability to communicate with deities and spirits. Variously called seers, healers, or medicine men, or women. I just added that bit there. But mostly widely known today as shamans. They are called upon to cure physical or emotional illness, secure food during times of famine, help find misplaced or stolen objects, predict the future, control the weather, retrieve the departing souls of the sick, and guide those of the dead. Shamans usually try to contact the spirit world while in a trance. To reach this altered state of consciousness, they employ methods not unlike those used in some modern parapsychological experiments. They may meditate quietly or concentrate on the rhythmic sounds of drumming, singing, or dancing. They may fast or use hallucinogenic drugs. Once the mind and body have surrendered to the trance, the shaman is free to visit, often, it is said, through magical flight, the spirit world. There the shaman receives a message that may come in the form of a magic song, prayer, or ritual to be performed. It may also be an illuminating vision about the nature of life. On rare occasions, shamans have sought to describe, through words and pictures, some of the often ineffable messages they receive during psychic odysseys to the spirit world. Examples from 3 tribal cultures: the Igloolik Eskimos. Well, this is a vintage book, please excuse. That would probably be called Inuits these days. The Oglala Swix Indians. Again, inappropriate word, but some people do identify as Indians, but some people would say that Native American is more appropriate. And tribes of Mexico are shown on the following 6 pages. And of course, please excuse any pronunciations that are not of my culture, not of my bloodline. Okay, Black Elk's Great Vision. During his lifetime, Black Elk, an Oglala Swix, I can never remember how to say that. It's Sioux. You're welcome to leave a comment down below. Chief and medicine man had several visions that helped him guide his people through misfortunes. But his first journey to the spirit world occurred when Black Elk was a young boy. In 1931, the aged Black Elk recalled this vision for poet John G. Neihardt. Black Elk's boyhood friend, Standing Bear, illustrated the story with these drawings. For a number of years, spirit voices had called out and sung to Black Elk, he related, and when he reached the age of 9, the voices said, "It is time." With that, Black Elk suddenly fell ill and lay near death for 12 days. During this time, the great vision occurred. 2 spirits came down from the sky to fetch the boy from his home. He said, and 2 spirits came down to fetch the boy from his home, he said. And with them Black Elk ascended to a world of cloud, a great white plain with snowy hills and mountains. There, in a teepee adorned with a rainbow, and at its entrance, Black Elk met the 6 grandfathers, the most powerful spirits in the world. They looked older than men can ever be, he said, old like hills, like stars. The grandfathers taught Black Elk about the spiritual values of life and presented him with symbols of their powers: a cup of water, a sacred bow that make life or destroy it, the healing herb and the cleansing sacred wind, the peace pipe and the herb of understanding, the hoop of the world, symbolizing the universe, the flowering stick, symbol of the tree of life. Then Black Elk was led to the center of the earth, where he was shown the goodness and the beauty and the strangeness of the greening earth, the spirit shapes of things as they should be. His tutelage complete, Black Elk was dismissed by the oldest grandfather, who told him, "Go back with power to the place from where you came." Black Elk returned to his village. His illness was cured, but he had changed forever. The lightheartedness of boyhood had been transformed into the maturity of one who speaks with the knowledge of the ages. Led by two guides with flaming spears, Black Elk ascends on a cloud to visit the spirits. "I could see my mother and my father yonder," he recalled, "and I felt sorry to be leaving them." As Black Elk was presented to the six grandfathers, the spirits of the east, west, north, south, earth, and sky, he shook all over with fear, for these were not old men, but the powers of the world. From the center of the hoop of the world, Black Elk surveys each quadrant of the universe and the objects that symbolize its power. Demonstrating his newly acquired abilities, Black Elk uses the lightning-tipped sacred spear to turn the spirit of drought into a harmless turtle. At the end of his vision, Black Elk views from the center of the earth the shape of all shapes, as they must live together like one being. Other ways of seeing. In the world of everyday existence, the five senses reign, but their powers are sharply limited. We perceive the universe in glimpses through narrow portals, acquiring our knowledge by sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. But what if knowledge has wider gateways and thresholds? What if, beyond vision, humans have another way of seeing? All over the world, from time immemorial, some people have been called gifted with what is known as second sight, the third eye, the sixth sense. Powers of the mind that seem to bypass the usual sensory channels and transcend mundane reality. Shamans have communed with their gods. Saints have seen visions. Oracles have foretold the deaths of kings. And from time to time, ordinary people have felt a moment's slippage into the inexplicable and uncanny. Researchers have begun trying to codify psychic experiences among the categories posited are clairvoyance, or the ability to see objects and events beyond the range of physical vision, telepathy, the ability to read minds and transmit thoughts, precognition, the ability to perceive future events, and retrocognition, the ability to see into the past. In the following pages, a scientist bears clairvoyant witness to a distant fire. A doctor peers into a vanished past in a moment of retrocognition. A mother hears telepathically her child's inaudible cries. For years, such experiences have been claimed and studied, but they have not, as yet, been fully explained. Science and the spirits. The mid-19th century marked one of those historic junctures when faith and reason threatened to run afoul of each other to the detriment of both. The Industrial Revolution had brought with it social upheaval and confusion, as well as a full flood of interest in science. Sometimes old truths withstood the torrent. Sometimes they are swamped. Against this tumultuous backdrop, spiritualism, belief that the dead survive, discarnate, and often through mediums can communicate with the living, raged across America and parts of Europe. Eventually, it even came to intrigue the intelligentsia, some of whom saw a rare chance to wed rationalism to belief. What if, they thought, the newest methods of science could be brought to bear on the oldest riddles of metaphysics? So thinking, eminent Britishers organized the Society of Psychical Research, better known as SPR. In brackets, they put that. In London in 1882. Its agenda included not only mediumship, but hypnotism, telepathy, clairvoyance, and any other area where the mind seemed to transcend its boundaries. An American SPR was organized in Boston some 3 years later. More fractions than the British counterpart, the ASPR went through several disruptions caused by disputes over aims and methods. Nevertheless, it persists today, headquarters in New York. Recently, the organization began to restructure its jumbled archives and make them available for researchers and historians. From those archives come the pictures on the following pages. They represent some of the earliest steps, stumbling but venturesome, towards documenting the paranormal. Mental and physical mediums. The ASPR studied mediums in two categories, mental and physical. Mental mediums bring only spoken or written messages from the spirits. The more spectacular, if less plausible, physical mediums produce spectral manifestations, rappings, tooting trumpets, trembling tables, and sometimes even ectoplasm. Eerily diaphanous matter. I love reading old books. Said by some to be the very substance, rejecting all projections, clearing the throat chakra. Let me say that again. Said by some to be the very substance of materialized spirits. The Society's most fruitful investigation of a mental medium involved a Boston homemaker named Leonora Piper. Piper was discovered by the psychologist William James, who, after early encounters with her, said he believed she had a power as yet unexplained. Both the ASPR and the SPR probed her work in studies spanning almost 30 years. In all that time, fraud was never proved. There was much debate as to whether Piper was truly visited by spirits or merely gleaned information from her sitters telepathically. The fact was, however, that she often provided intimate details of their personal lives. Piper's method was to enter a trance, presumably clearing the way for spirit guides who would speak in voices quite dissimilar to hers. As her career progressed, she could even admit two spirits at once, one who spoke and another who seemingly guided her hand in writing. A muscular young Neapolitan immigrant named Nino Pecoraro was a physical medium who is studied by both the ASPR and the magazine Scientific American. Investigative methods included strip searching Pico Raro, binding his hands, and placing him inside an enclosure. Clearing the throat chakra. On a nearby table would be such items as a trumpet and a tambourine. During the seance, both instruments might be heard, along with rappings and whistles. The table itself might move. Nevertheless, fingerprints appeared on objects spectrally manipulated in Pecoraro's seances. And once, when the great Houdini tied his bonds, Pecoraro managed only feeble rappings. On the whole, the ASPR found him far less convincing than Piper. The Strange Case of Marjorie. If not the most convincing, Boston's Minna Crandon was easily the most controversial medium the American Society for Psychical Research ever studied. She was better known as Marjorie, a nom de séance given her by a psychic investigator, and her exploits during the 1920s helped occasion a major rift within the ASPR. Marjorie was a physical medium, and ectoplasm was her specialty. Phantom limbs seemed to sprout from her body. Spectral hands groped across the table. Moreover, Marjorie's ectoplasm was not the usual vaporous stuff, but more solid. Material not unlike custard. Some investigators thought it looked like lung tissue. Marjorie was married to the eminent surgeon Leroy Goddard Grandin, who was his wife's biggest booster, but skeptics could only ponder the tissue's possible origin. In any event, she clearly relied on one source of familiar help. Her chief spirit guide was her dead brother, Walter. In 1922, a Scientific American contest offered $2,500 to any medium who could produce a visible psychic manifestation, and Marjorie was an entry. Judges included Scientific American Associate Editor J. Malcolm Bird, ASPR researcher Walter F. Prince, and the magical Houdini. Bird became convinced of Marjorie's legitimacy and wrote rave reviews in his magazine. Newspapers embellished the story, saying the medium had even stumped Houdini. So incensed by this was Houdini, who had yet to investigate the medium, that he broke off a tour and rushed to Boston. After a few seances, he concluded Marjorie was an arrant fraud. Prince, who had made his own probe, could not have agreed more. He even suggested snidely that more credulous investigators were being swayed by the lady's personal charms. He and Bird had a bitter falling out, and when Bird joined the ASPR, Prince resigned. He became research officer for a new organization, the Boston Society of Psychic Research. The more scientifically minded ASPR members followed his lead, and the original organization was thus split into warring Marjorie and anti-Marjorie factions. The breach healed some years later. Walter sought to verify his existence by leaving thumbprints in a wax-like material. One expert claimed that the prints belonged to Marjorie's dentist. The name Psych above the prints was Dr. Crandon's pet name for his wife. Ectoplasm, spirits in the flesh. Although Marjorie was a wonder with ectoplasm, clearing the throat chakra, she by no means had a corner on the market. Is that a bit better? Yeah, that's a bit better. Is it? No. Is that better? Sorry, excuse me. If you're just joining us, we're reading from a book called Psychic Powers, from the series of Mysteries of the Unknown by Lifetime Books. Although Marjorie was a wonder with the ectoplasm, she by no means had a corner on the market. In spiritualism's heyday, ectoplasm was all the rage. It was variously semi-solid, vaporous, or even liquid, and it might emerge in forms ranging from spidery tendrils to spectacular full-figure manifestations. But it almost always seemed to come from the medium's body, usually emanating from the mouth or some other bodily orifice. An early and famed extruder of ectoplasm was a French woman named Martha Beraud. Beraud. B-E-R-A-U-D. Chuck it in the comments, y'all. Known in psychic circles as Eva C. Her emanations were said to begin with a flow that resembled thick saliva and end up with a consistency akin to cream cheese. In 1905, Eva astounded the psychic researcher Charles Richard by producing a robed and bearded full figure who identified himself as Bien Bo, a long dead Hindu. Eva later confessed that Bien Bo was in fact an Arab servant who was very much alive, but Richard would have none of it. He could not have been tricked. He insisted Eva's confession merely denoted that she was mentally unstable, which he said was typical of mediums. A Canadian medium who went by the name of Mary M., was notable for the human faces that sometimes appeared on the ectoplasm that she extruded. Her ectoplasm was variously described as looking like cotton wool, dough, or paste. Theories about ectoplasm abounded. Some had it that spirits formed themselves from the substance of the medium's body or soul, or both. Allegedly, for this reason, seance etiquette forebode touching the ectoplasm lest the medium be harmed or even killed. Few such casualties were ever reported, however, and violators of the taboo sometimes found that ectoplasm felt very much like cloth. Indeed, one medium who finally declared himself a fraud reported that chiffon was the ectoplasm of choice for him and his colleagues. Sometimes the fabric would be treated with a phosphorescent substance to give it a ghostly glow in the dim light of seance rooms. The material could be manipulated with a variety of mechanical contrivances, or it could be concealed inside the medium's body, even swallowed in some cases, and extruded at will. Hmm. The astral pen and the patient's worth. Rejecting all projections. The astral pen and the astral pen of patient's worth. Hmm. Speech and ectoplasm were not the spirit's only vehicle for visiting the living. In fact, one of the more unusual cases in psychic lore began with the Ouija board. A St. Louis homemaker named Pearl Curran was fiddling with the board one June night in 1913 when the pointer spelled out, "Oh, why let sorrow steal thy heart? Thy bosom is but its foster mother. The world its cradle, and the loving home its grave." This flowery communique was similar to others Curran had received, but the presumed author was still a mystery. In July, however, the spirit gave a name, Patience Worth, born a Quaker in 17th century England. In time, the Ouija board would be discarded in favor of direct mental linkage, but Pearl and Patience would remain their relationship until Curran's death in 1938. In early sittings, Patience showed a fondness for aphorisms, but she soon progressed to serious and torrential literary output, dictating plays, dramatic poems, novels. Over the years, most were published, usually to popular and critical acclaim. Meanwhile, the psychic story of Patience became a nationwide sensation. She was as versatile as she was prolific. Although she usually wrote in relatively modern prose, a medieval idyll called Telka, published in 1928, was written in an Anglo-Saxon dialect that seemed to date as a pre-13th century. It appeared, it appeared unlikely that Curran, 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 with little education, was doing such work on her own, though some investigators theorized that Patience might have been a secondary personality born in Curran's subconscious. In 1920, of course they said that. In 1924, the Boston SPR's Walter F. Prince investigated patients, and the skeptical and meticulous researcher was astounded by her abilities. She could not, for instance, create two literary works at once, she could, for instance, create two literary works at once, switching between them and never losing track of either. Prince concluded that either Curran's subconscious was working in some radically odd way, or some cause operating through, but not originating in, her subconscious was at work. Patience Worth Ouija board messages could be considered an extreme form of so-called automatic writing, in which a spirit supposedly guides its host's hand in writing astral messages. The once popular variation was called slate writing, in which words seem to appear on a slate without benefit of a human agent. The ASPR tended to dismiss slate writing as more of a parlor trick than a psychic event. However, since it could be easily faked, a psychological explanation for patients that she was a disassociated part of Curran's own personality is also given for a psychic phenomenon known as obsession. An obsessing spirit supposedly invades a person and alters the host's personality. Obsession is considered a possible prelude to spirit possession. Houdini wrote of many ways to fake the sort of slate writing shown above. Common ones entailed switching slates. The medium would write a spirit message on one slate in advance, then substitute it for a blank one during the seance. Phantoms on film. Generally, the ASPR was dubious of photographs purporting to show spirits of the dead. But when Marguerite Dupont-Lee declared she was taking such pictures, the society paid attention. Lee, a daughter of the Delaware DuPonts, was of impeccable lineage, spotless repute, philanthropic impulse, and apparent good sense. Her friend, Episcopal minister Kemper Bocock, died in 1904. Thereafter, Lee began having episodes of automatic writing, possibly communications from Bocock. The writing told her to take up photography. She did, usually putting an oil portrait of either herself or Bocock on a chair and taking pictures of it. Some of them showed inexplicable blobs of light and spectral faces, some amorous, some distinct. Some looked like the dead pastor. About the same time, Lee was having her own picture taken by William M. Keeler. He was expert in spirit photography, snapping supposed discarnate entities who coalesced around loved ones in portraits. rejecting or projections. With Keeler's involvement, Bacoc's appearances proliferated. There were pictures of Bacock dancing, preaching, sightseeing, and so on. Lee confided to the ASPR's James H. Hyslop, Hyslop, a philosopher and psychic investigator in 1919, declaring that in Lee's case there could be no question of fraud. He undertook an investigation only to conclude that he could not say exactly what was going on. But by 1920 he was dead. Walter F. Prince was the ASPR's head researcher, and the Keeler-Lee pictures had numbered some 4,000 after studying the case himself. Prince had little doubt about the forces at work, although differential to Lee, Prince clearly regarded Keeler as a humbug and an exploitative cad. Prince noted that in all the Bacock photographs, the minister's head appears facing about 1/3 off center, right or left, or almost in profile, right or left. The two poses were amazingly like those in the only two extant pictures of Bacock while he was alive. Whatever post-mortem pursuit was pictured, Prince noted, the minister smiles, not exudes, exalts not, exalts not, smiles not, exalts not, wonders not, grieves not, nor ever once opens his lips, but is as if fixed in the calm of Buddha forever. Prince also observed that static Bacock heads were at odds with an alarmingly plastic Bacock body, which appeared variously as fat, thin, short, tall, swan-necked, no-necked. The photos, Prince thought, were obviously faked. Seeking a Science of ESP. Seeking a Science of ESP. I'm just going to read the first paragraph of this. In the 1920s, most American universities were decidedly lukewarm towards psychic research. At the time, the paranormal was tainted by association with spiritualism and fraudulent mediums. So suspect was the field that Cornell University psychologist declared he would not even have the Journal of the Society of Psychical Research, the SPR, in the library, lest it inflame the imaginations and corrupt the minds of the students. Psychologist William James, an academic of such stature that he could profess an interest in the paranormal and be taken seriously, had died in 1910. In the years following, spiritualism still had enough adherents among the public that Harvard, Stanford, and Clark universities got bequests for psychic research. Though the schools were a bit uncomfortable about them. To an inquiry about such activities as Clark, President G. Stanley Hall responded that he would much prefer to have you use the phrase psychological research rather than psychic research. In connection with the Smith Battles Fund here as we do not indulge in what is generally known as psychic research. What little serious experimentation did go on came to naught. John E. Coover, a psychic research fellow at Stanford, did a series of painstaking tests in which his subjects tried to guess the number and suit of playing cards held by someone else. He concluded that his subjects showed no evidence of telepathy. At Harvard, L.T. Trollin designed a complicated piece of machinery to use instead of cards, but the experiment was more an excuse to try out the appearance apparatus itself than a serious investigation of telepathy. His results were also negative, as he had expected them to be, and like Coover, he abandoned the field. If psychic research was to gain a foothold in scientific circles, it needed a new William James, an enthusiast enthusiasts with enough prestige in orthodox academic circles to discourage critics and make responsible psychic experimentation respectable. Just such a figure materialized in the person of William McDougall, a British physician and psychologist who arrived from England in 1920 to take the psychological chair that James had held at Harvard University, that is. McDougall had earned enough respect in mainstream science to devise his own curriculum. He was openly interested in the paranormal and would later adapt from the German the term parapsychology for serious explorations in the area. How interesting. Eyes covered by cotton batting and a blindfold. Poland's Bogna Stefanska demonstrated dermo-optical perception, literally skin sight. Subjects with this alleged power seem to perceive color, shape, size, and mass without using their eyes. Stefanska, 10 years old in this 1973 photograph, appeared able to perform even when the material to be seen was under a pane of glass.